Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my week number 18 championship week running back start or sit decisions for the 2023 fantasy football season, going in depth through every single matchup for week number 18 at the running back position. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure they do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 18 running back start or sit decisions for the 2023 fantasy football season. We begin with the first of two games on Saturday, an AFC North division rivalry matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. Now, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they do need to win here to get into the playoffs, and they also need some additional help from some other teams. And while the Ravens in this game may end up benching some guys, I just don't think, even against a potentially depleted Ravens defense due to them benching some players, that the Steelers will be able to effectively move the ball in this game. Now, Najee had a great game last week, right? I'm someone that is definitely more of a Najee Harris hater compared to a Najee Harris lover. I'll give him his flowers when he deserves them, right? Running back 7 last week in Seattle, 27 carries for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. But like I said, against the Ravens, I just really don't see him playing all that well, so I would leave him on my bench. And for Jaylen Warren, while Najee was going crazy in Seattle, Warren also had a top 12 game, 13 carries for 75 yards and 4 receptions on 4 targets for 23 yards and a touchdown. Again, I could definitely see one of these guys, whether that be Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren, falling into the end zone and having a fine game. But against the Ravens, with at least some incentive to not shut the whole team down due to them potentially being on the bench for 2 straight weeks, right? Because they've locked up the bye. So you don't want all your players ice cold for 2 weeks until the playoff game. So I really do think that the Steelers are going to be on the struggle bus in this game. They might end up winning, but I don't think it's going to be because Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris form an Eiffel Tower over that Ravens defense. Gus Edwards was outscored by Justice Hill last week, but he did still end up scoring a touchdown, as we have come accustomed to ever since Keaton Mitchell got hurt. 3 straight games with a touchdown for the Gus Bus. I think that Gus could be benched halfway into this game, maybe later, maybe sooner, since he's the running back 1 on the team. And with him being touchdown dependent, to me, it is just getting way too cute if you try and play him. Justice Hill did a lot with a little last week, going 3 for 48 in the rushing game, and then 5 receptions on 5 targets for 64 yards and a touchdown against the Dolphins. So Hill is normally a guy that sees like 10 touches, most of the time fewer than 10 touches. And if the team benches Lamar against the Steelers again at some point, I think that will happen. Against the Steelers defense, it's just going to be hard for me to project Justice Hill to do that good, so he's a sit as well. Next up, we move to the Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts Saturday Night Football. If either of these teams were to make the playoffs, they need a win here. So this is going to be a game where both teams are trying their ass off. Devin Singletary, in this scenario, we should be seeing a full game out of Devin Singletary, as I don't feel as though there's really any reason for the Texans to bench Devin Singletary. He has been on a bit of a downward skid as of recently, right? I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that Devin Singletary has been fan-fucking-tastic recently, but in this matchup against a run defense that is far from ideal, I do think that Singletary should finish as a middle-of-the-road running back 2 in this game. Dameon Pierce did end up seeing 9 touches last week, which is a cut above what you've seen as of recently, but on those 9 touches, he mustered just 21 yards. And while I am a Dameon Pierce guy, For Devin Singletary's sake, I hope that they just go back to using him much less, as all Pierce is essentially doing here is cock blocking Singletary away from getting touches. For the Indianapolis Colts, Jonathan Taylor to me is in the same exact boat, the same scenario as Singletary in my opinion, where it seems very unlikely that the team would end up benching him, even if they're up big late on in the game. He has now scored a touchdown in back-to-back weeks and looked rock solid against the Raiders. Last week, the Texans defense is solid against the run, but with there being a lot of uncertainty at the running back position this week, I would definitely rank Jonathan Taylor as a top 12 back at the very least, and more than likely, when push comes to shove, at the end of the week, he'll probably end up being a top 5 running back in my rankings. Trey Sermon, it feels as though Zach Moss was limited in practice to start the week. Maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. If Moss plays, then he's the RB2. If not, it's going to be Trey Sermon. Sermon isn't half bad. We all make the joke about how Sermon always spreads the good word, but JT's the workhorse, so you're never really going to end up starting him. Now we move to the beginning of the Sunday slate. Now, this is a very interesting Sunday slate, as we have 6 games at 1, 7 at 4:25, which is really out of the ordinary, right? Having more games at 4 than at 1. And then we have Sunday Night Football to cap things off, the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. And as a Dolphins fan, spoiler alert, I am very, very nervous. So Cleveland Browns at the Cincinnati Bengals, kicking off the 1 o'clock slate here. For the Cleveland Browns, Jerome Ford hit the New York Jumbo Jets last week with a Mortal Kombat, get over here, fucking fatality last week. And then they hit him with a finisher right afterwards, right? This was a game where Jerome Ford went crazy. 2 touchdowns, 26 fantasy points as a top 5 back against a pretty solid Jets run defense. The team is locked in right now, the Browns, as a top 5 seed in the AFC. They are locked in as the 5th seed. They cannot move. They could win, they'll be the 5th seed, they lose to the 5th seed. So there's really no need to utilize Jerome Ford F-150 in a strong way. Now, maybe Ford ends up getting a couple of touches here and there, but with them more than likely also benching cool Joe Flacco, even if Ford does get more touches than I personally would project, without Joe Flacco, this offense is not going to be able to really move the ball that effectively. Kareem Hunt, if the team was to bench Ford, then maybe Hunt could be a good play. But again, they're probably also going to bench Joe Flacco. So I think the team would just turn to straight up dog shit, so I wouldn't even consider him. For the Bengals have been eliminated from the playoffs after suffering a big fat L to the mid-Kansas City Chiefs last week. In that game, Mixon played well as a top 12 back, scoring 19 fantasy points. Now Mixon faces a pretty solid Browns run defense. As of right now, assuming that Mixon plays, he is a decent middle of the road running back to start. No one that I'm getting super excited for to bang the drum about, but he'll be fine. If the team for some reason was to bench Mixon, which I don't forecast as of right now, that I would start Chase Brown, who has looked incredibly explosive at points this season. But assuming that Mixon does start, Brown has continued to see less and less touches as of recently, so there's really no need to start him. Next up, we move to the cold like Minnesota Vikings at the Detroit Lions. Now, for the Vikings, they need to win to get in, as well as both of the Packers and the Seahawks losing, plus so not only do they need to win, they need the Packers and the Seahawks to lose. They also need either one of the Bucs or the Saints to lose. Even if the odds are not ever in the favor, shout out to Katniss Everdeen, the Vikings will be hunting for a W in this spot. The quarterback situation is up in the air, according to Kevin O'Connell, as he has not made a decision yet. And that will affect my opinion on Chandler. For some reason, they end up rolling out with that bum-ass motherfucker Jaren Hall again. Then Ty Chandler can't even be close to being a start because the offense will not be able to function. I assume they go back to 9-inch Nicholas Mullins, but maybe they go back to Pastor not Josh Dobbs. So interesting situations. Now, they are going up against a Lions team that has already stated, Dan Campbell stated, like the team stated it, Dan Campbell said he will play the starters but doesn't know for how long, so this could be a huge spot for Chandler, with the quarterback situation being a mess here. I'll have him ranked as a top 24 guy, but he's a lower end running back too. The upside is definitely present for him though. Alexander Mattison, his touches have fallen quicker than fucking Humpty Dumpty off of that wall. 5 or fewer touches in back-to-back games, and with Chandler taking the reins in this offense, you can't be playing Mattison. For the Lions, I would start Jahmyr Gibbs, but do it at your own risk, right? This feels like something that we want to monitor as the week goes on, right? Maybe we get some nuggets about how, oh, maybe they're going to sit the starters early out, or maybe they're going to let them play 3 quarters. We'll find out. Because if Jahmyr Gibbs is just getting yanked out earlier in the game, then he's probably not going to smash. But I think that even if he plays like half the game, he could still have a decent game due to how explosive he is. And the fact that we don't know how much he's going to play is exactly why Week 18 Fantasy Football Championships are fugazi, right? It's a fugazi way to win. You play all season with all of these studs in your lineup, and then in Week 18, when you actually win your money at the end, you get the crown. Shout out Biggie Smalls. Some of your guys won't be there, and Gibbs might not be there for you, right? The matchup here isn't ideal, but I will have more of an opinion on Gibbs once more news comes out on how much work he'll end up seeing. Monty has fallen off the edge of the earth compared to earlier on in the season, and with that said, though, he's still been a fine start weekly, right? He just hasn't had that upper echelon ability that he had earlier on in the season, with the upside feeling more limited than ever, and the matchup being pretty rough. Match with him potentially getting benched early, I would just stay away from Monty. Next up, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Tennessee Titans. Now, the Jaguars a couple of weeks ago were on top of the world, right? They were banging on their chest like King Kong on top of the Empire State Building. And after that, they went straight down the toilets to more than likely being the 4th seed unless they somehow fuck this up and lose. Since they do need this game to guarantee making the playoffs, I expect to see a lot of Etienne, who was the running back 6 last week. A lot of people were nervous about Etienne, and he smashed, rushing for over 100 yards and scoring 2 total tugs against the Carolina Panthers. The Titans defense is softer than baby doo-doo, so I fully expect Etienne to eat here. Whether or not Trevor Lawrence ends up playing, I'm firing up Etienne with supreme confidence as a top 8 guy. Dearness Johnson is a guy that we'll see at maximum 5 touches per game. And, you know, maximum, that's like getting very lucky with how well Etienne has played this season. That really does make sense, right? Etienne has a strong stranglehold over the backfield. So Johnson is a sit. For the Titans, right, we just talked about how confident we are. We got that hubris in Etienne. Derrick Henry is the exact opposite. He is in that high-end running back 3 range for me. He has actually looked pretty solid this season, but with the Titans offense looking like a steaming pile of horse shit, with Tannehill as the quarterback 1, I just don't have the highest hopes for Henry. I will still have to list him as a start because the matchup here against the Jaguars is fine, and the upside's always there with Tractor Cedo Derrick Henry. But I'd be lying if I said I was extremely confident here. Despite the game script being chef's kiss magnifique perfect against the Texans, right? The Titans were getting their back blown out in this game. They got hit with the goddamn spine buster, and still Spears only had 10 total touches. And while I do like his talent, this matchup doesn't really reek of a Jaguars blowout, so I definitely think the game script will more favor Henry, making him a start and Spears a sit. Next up, we move to the New York Jumbo Jets at the New England Patriots, the bottom of the barrel in the AFC East matchup here. Now, the Jets might be sleeping with the fishes, Godfather style, shout out Luca Brasi, but I still expect Hall to get a hefty workload in this game. Back-to-back games with 9 or more targets, and I could easily see him getting at least, at minimum, 6 targets here. The Patriots defense definitely looks scary, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is some cupcake soft serve matchup, but I still do think Hall should end up cracking the high-end running back 2 range and maybe ends up as a top 12 guy. He has been a top 3 back in back-to-back weeks, so obviously that is very possible, but the matchup is concerning enough for me not to rank him super highly. Israel Abanaconda, my anaconda don't. The Jets cut Dalvin Cook, so now Izzy is going to end up Israel. Abracadabra is the RB2. Before I say anything else about Izzy, let me just ask you a question. Right? This is like fucking Dora the Explorer. You just answer out loud, right? Would you ever start the running back 2 on the 2023 Jets offense? The answer to that is fuck no, baby. So we're not going to talk about Izzy any longer. He's a clear sit. And the Jets did cut Dalvin Cook, which really wasn't that surprising considering they really reduced his workload as of recently. And he looked pretty bad this season. Ezekiel Elliott, this isn't the best spot against the Jets, but the Jets defense also isn't elite against the run. Like we just saw Jerome Ford, hit them with some back shots. Kareem Hunt even had a decent game. So Zeke should be fine here. I think he's like a safe bet to be a top 24 back. But with how straight up trash Zappy looks, it is hard for me to envision him hitting that peak like a couple weeks ago where he's a top 8 back. I do definitely like him a lot as a low end running back too. But it's not a super fun start because, again, situation isn't the best. But things could be way, way worse. Kevin Harris had a decent game last week, but on just 4 touches, you can't be too optimistic. He is a 5-touch or fewer guy in 2 of his 3 games played this season, so there's really no need to play him. If you guys have enjoyed today's video thus far, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below as well as hitting that like button, whether you are new to the channel or not. So Falcons at Saints. Next up here, and this one is pretty simple. So for the Saints, Alvin Kamara suffered an ankle injury that is believed to be a high ankle sprain based upon what I've read from Twitter, which should mean he misses this game, leaving Jamal with 2 A's Williams as the lead back. Last week, he had 19 carries in Tampa for 58 yards, as well as 4 receptions on 4 targets for 13 yards. When Williams has been given the opportunity to be the guy this season, he has fallen straight on his face, and even with the matchup being fine here, I think if you play Jamal Williams, you're just getting way too cute, right? This guy averages just 3 yards per carry this season. Kendre Miller's a sit as well. He hasn't really done shit this season because he's been inactive for 7 straight games, but if he plays here, maybe it's his time to shine. But the key word is may, as more than likely Williams gets all the touches and Kendre's season ends on a low note. For the Falcons, both of these teams here are in a win scenario, so that does make this a scenario where Bijan's definitely playing. He was the running back 24 last week in Chicago in an efficient game, but he hasn't really seen that full boost in touches that I want to see, right? If you're the Falcons, why is Bijan not getting 28 carries, 25 carries a game? Legitimately. Their offense sucks donkey dick, so why is he not? Now, they have phased away Algier Moore, which is great. But the problem here with Bijan, while I'm not going to give him the Gawk 9000 special, is because Arthur Smith is a stooge, which makes him risky. I'm still going to have to rank him relatively high because, again, there's a lot of unknowns at running back. But Bijan is a guy that's very talented, but there's a lot of unknowns with him. Now, again, the team is trying to give Algier less touches, but he did bust off a huge reception last week for 75 yards and a tug. Even with them seemingly leaning more to Bijan, we all know deep down that Algier magically could have 15 or 20 touches and no one would be shocked this week. Based upon 10 or fewer touches, though, in back-to-back weeks, I would have to bench Algier, despite him scoring a touchdown in both of those games. Next up, we move to the Buccaneers at the line of Panthers. Now, the Buccaneers had legitimately the world in front of them, right? Win, and you're basically in last week, and they shit the bed. So the Buccaneers are now in a win here over the Panthers, and you clinch the NFC South title. While the Buccaneers, again, they shit the bed. They shit down their leg against the Saints. And White had his first down game in forever as the running back 38. I expect a strong bounce back here. I think they're going to beat down on a lifeless Panthers team again. Rachaad White has basically been a stone cold lock all season to be a top 12 back, so I'm not worried at all. He's going to be a top 5 back in my rankings. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he finished as the RB1. Now, despite the Buccaneers getting hit with the Cleveland Steamer last week by the Saints, Chase Edmonds had a solid game, but with Rachaad White being the clear lead back and with Edmonds touches fluctuating more than a prepubescent boy's voice, I would stay away from Chase Edmonds. For the Panthers, Chuba's a low-end running back 3 type of guy. Or not a low-end running back 3, but he's a low-end start in the running back 3 range. If the Panthers offense wasn't just so incredibly bad, then Chuba would have a lot more argument about the upside because he gets so many touches, but with lackluster performance after lackluster performance from Bryce Young, Chuba is a desperation start at best. He will likely score 12 plus points, but hitting that peak of 20 plus so heavily hinges on the touchdown, and the touchdowns are hard to come by in the Panthers offense. For Miles Sanders, he's another one of those backs that has just been hilariously bad this season. I don't know how old you guys are, but back in the day, there used to be like Call of Duty trolling tages, right? Troll tages, where it'd be like do 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 do, and you could just play that song over Miles Sanders highlights because there really is no highlights. It's just low lights. The guy fucking sucks donkey cock. Sanders is so bad that I could legitimately make like a 20-minute long video just laughing at the guy. I'm glad I was not advocating for him in the summer, and I'm certainly not advocating for him now. He is a clear sit. Now we move into the 4 o'clock slate of things. The Bears at the Packers. Khalil Herbert. Now, Foreman got benched last week, opening the door for another huge Khalil Herbert game. Back-to-back games as a top 12 running back. Has Khalil set up here to smash yet again against the Packers, because the Packers defense is no bueno, assuming that we end up seeing Foreman get benched again. In both of those top 12 games, Khalil had rushed for over 110 yards and a touchdown. This matchup against the Packers is a wet dream spot for Khalil. His expert consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros right now is running back 29. To me, he's a clear top 20 back, and I would rank him as a mid-range running back too, and by the end of the week, I might convince myself to rank him even higher. Roschon Johnson, while Herbert was hitting the Falcons with some back shots last week, Roschon was balling as well, 59 total yards and a touchdown, top 18 back, and Waddis possibly does it again because the Packers defense is really just that bad, with him getting just around 10 touches weekly, most of the time less than that. In an offense that could combust, implode at any point, I think it would be best to just leave Roschon on your bench. For the Packers, if the Packers are to win this game, they're in the playoffs, which is very simple compared to the explanation that we have to give for a lot of the teams, how they're going to make the playoffs, right? They need to do this. Another team needs to fucking stand backwards. Another team needs to get butt fucked in order for them to make it, right? It's just how things go. Very simple for the Packers. You win and you are in. Now, they technically could get in with a loss, but they would need some serious help if that was the case. Since the Packers need a win, they should feed Jones the same way they did over the last 2 weeks with back-to-back games over 20 touches and over 120 yards. Now, he has yet to score a touchdown since week 9. In that time period, he missed some games, but feels like a while since he's found the end zone. But if he was to get one here against Chicago, that would open the floodgates for a top 6 game against the Bears, knowing he'll see a bunch of touches. He should be a mid to high-end running back, too. A.J. Dillon is a sit. He runs like there's just something shoved up his sphincter. 3.4 yards per carry. You already knew you had to sit him. Next up, we move to the Denver Broncos at the Las Vegas Raiders in Viva Las Vegas. Now, Zamir White is going to be a start, assuming that Josh Jacobs doesn't come back, but there's really no need for Josh Jacobs to come back. Both of these teams are eliminated from the playoffs. In the last 3 weeks as the starter, White has been a top 16 back in all games, and I expect him to do that yet again here. He is a 20-plus touch guy, basically locked and loaded in, and even with the Raiders offense being kind of up in the air weekly, White has been a steady hammer for the team. I like him as a lower-end running back 1 this week. Amir Abdullah, even without Jacobs, he is lucky to see 4 or 5 touches, and 4 or 5 touches on the Raiders isn't roster worthy, so you're sitting him. For the Broncos country, let's ride. Javonte has been straight up dookie, straight up trash over the last 3 weeks, and if this was my championship game, I'm not trusting him. Things were more of the same last week offensively with Stidham under center. It didn't magically just jolt Pikachu style this offense, and even against the Raiders defense, I'm definitely not starting Javonte. Jaleel McLaughlin is a solid player, and he actually averages averages 5.6 yards per carry. The problem with him is he just doesn't get enough work. Back-to-back decent games for Jaleel, but with no signs of Javonte just getting benched, I'm not playing him. Next up, we move to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles fly at the New York Football Giants. So the Eagles have already clinched a playoff spot, but they do need to win to keep the number 2 seed. With Dallas and them fighting for the NFC East, I would be shocked if the Eagles benched Swift or really any of the starters, especially since the team just lost to the fucking Arizona Cardinals in a shootout. They got shot out by a team that doesn't even have a lot of good players. They just lost to the Cardinals. Like, we were all pointing and laughing, ha 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 ha. You know, remember when the Cowboys lost to the Cardinals and everyone's laughing at them early on in the season? This was way worse. This was even worse. Because that was so long ago, like, you could just forget about it, right? It was early on in the season, right? It is what it is, right? It's week fucking 17, and you lose to the Cardinals? Things need to be fixed. Nick Sirianni is about to get sent to Azkaban, okay? Swift could get benched late if this is a blowout, but I still have to rank him as a lower-end running back 1 because I feel like he's going to be in there a lot in this game. But before we break down the rest of this game, as well as the rest of the games on the Week 18 slate, the running back position, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends, our sponsor, over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the best place to play NFL Pick'em in the whole entire universe, and today Underdog Fantasy has a great offer for you guys. But first, I want to explain how the NFL Pick'em game works. You're going to have to pick a minimum of 2 players from at least 2 different teams. We're going to talk about the Colts versus the Texans here. We're going to go ahead and go with Nico Collins higher than 69.5 receiving yards, and then for the Colts, we're going to go with Michael Pittman higher than 72.5 receiving yards. If both of these hit, we'll get 3 times our entry fee. Now, if you do 3 picks and they all hit, it's 6 times. 4 picks is 10 times, and 5 picks is 20 times your entry fee. If you are new to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code Notorious, you'll receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. You deposit $100, they give an additional $100. If you do 50, additional 50, 25, additional 25. The minimum deposit on Underdog Fantasy is $10. If you have a gambling problem, make sure that you call 1-800-GAMBLER. Back on into things here. Kenneth Gainwell for the Eagles. I do think that the Eagles should lay the SmackDown brother here, but that's really far from a guarantee based upon how the Eagles have looked recently. Gainwell is a 12 points at max player, and he hasn't even gotten to that maximum 12 points this season. Even against the Giants, I would leave him on my bench. For the Giants, Saquon over the last 6 games has either been a top 10 back or outside the top 30. Interesting enough, it's the case of every other game, right? Good game, bad game, good game, bad game, good game, bad game. And last week was a bad game, running back 36. Now, I'm not trying to put my tinfoil hat on here, but the pattern will tell us that he's got to be a top 10 back here. Again, that's far from a guarantee. But with how the Eagles defense got slaughtered last week, I think Barkley could be a top 10 guy. Matt Breida, when Barkley is healthy, there's no need to even spend time talking about him. He has just 1 touch over the last 2 weeks. You sit him. Next up, we got the Seattle Seahawks at the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Seahawks are a team that needs to win here. They also need the Packers to either lose or tie. Or with a tie, they both need the Packers and Bucks to lose. Or a tie plus the Packers loss and the Saints loss and tie. That's a lot of mumbo jumbo. But that all means that the team is going to 100% be playing their starters, thus Kenneth Walker being a clear must start as a top 12 back. Last week, he had a solid showing up against a tough Steelers defense, 10 carries for 53 yards, and 3 receptions for 22 yards and a touchdown against the Cardinals defense. That is a wet dream spot for Walker, and with how the Arizona Cardinals offense looked last week, this might be a higher scoring game, pushing Walker to get more and more receptions. I would definitely fire up Kenneth Walker III with supreme confidence. Zach Charbonnet looked solid last week on limited work, but with Walker healthy, you simply can't start Charbonnet due to his touches being so low. While the Cardinals are eliminated from the playoffs, they laid a pipe for that ass like they were a plumber up against the Eagles last week in a very impressive victory. Connor ran a train on the defense, over 130 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns. He has now scored at least 1 touchdown in 4 straight games for a grand total of 6 touchdowns in those games. And I know, Nick, you've been a James Conner hater recently. Well, I'm done being a hater. I've been a James Conner truther his whole career, and I'm back on the fucking bandwagon. If you're playing a week 18, you got to start him. Back-to-back top 4 performances. He will be a top top five running back in my rankings this week. Imani DeMarcado, with Connor hitting the defenses with the 619 Rey Mysterio. DeMarcado's touches have dropped like it's hot, and he is a clear sit. Next up, we got the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, the Chiefs offense is functioning like a penis with erectile dysfunction right now, and the team is in dire need of getting some metaphorical Viagra. Normally, I feel as though the Chiefs would be smart to bench their starters, but with the offense in dismay, I feel like Pacheco will get tons of work here. He was the running back 2 last week and has been a must-start running back ever since week 3. I won't fully sit here and give him the Gawk 9000 special, since he could get benched later in the game, but for me, he's definitely a high-end running back 2 with arguments to be made to be a running back 1. Now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire missed last week with an illness, and I do expect him to suit up this week with Pacheco healthy, though there's no need to play him. Even with the choices being so slim at running back this week, I just cannot do it with Eckler. This fucker has scored less than 10 points in 2 of the last 3 games, and his 1 game above 10 points, he scored just 12. Again, I get maybe this is the week he gets back to his old ways against the Chiefs, but I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. If he goes off, I'm losing with him on my bench. I'm not fucking playing him. Joshua Kelly runs the ball. Like, one of his foot has like a 500-pound weight stuck to it. This guy sucks more donkey cock than Violet Myers, so you're definitely sitting him down. Next up, we move to the LA Rams at the 49ers. Now, another reason. Hey, oh my God, I made it to the championship in week 18. Kyron Williams has been amazing. So is Christian McCaffrey. Well, guess what? Christian McCaffrey's not playing, and I don't think Kyron Williams is going to play much either. I don't think Kyron will play very much, but if he does, I think his workload's getting reduced heavily. McVay typically sits players in games like this, as the Rams can only be, the 6th seed. They can move up to the 6th seed, or they'll be the 7th seed. Unless they really prefer an opponent, which they don't actually know who their opponent would be. I think they're just going to end up sitting a lot of guys. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but as of right now, I think starting Kyron is incredibly risky. Now, Ronnie Rivers seems to be the running back 2 as of recently, and could carry the reins of the backfield this week if they bench Kyron. With that said, though, even if the 49ers are benching a bunch of guys, do we really expect a guy with a porn star name to lead us to the fantasy championship? The answer to that is no. For the 49ers, I'm chancing it with Elijah Mitchell. No CMC on Sunday. Mitchell will be given the keys to the backfield. Last week, he had 17 carries for 80 yards and a tug, with the Rams in position to sit their starters. This could be a matchup that, obviously, if McCaffrey's playing, must start against the Rams, against anyone. But for Elijah Mitchell against the Rams' normal defense would be a little scary in my opinion. Now, again, I still probably would start him, but be a little bit more nervous. But they're probably going to sit some guys, so I do definitely think this is a better matchup than normal. I think Mitchell's a fine high-end running back 3 start. Offensive production will be suspect with Sam Darnold probably under center for a lot of the game, because they will eventually bench Brock Purdy. I don't think he plays the whole game. But there's also a lot worse options than Mitchell. Worse option than Mitchell would be Jordan the Numbers Mason. What does it mean? Because a few weeks ago, it felt as though he was the running back 2 behind McCaffrey. But now it's clear he's the number 3. In the scenario, he will back up Mitchell, but I don't project him to get enough work to be start-worthy. Next game here, we got the penultimate game, the Dallas Cowboys at the Washington Commanders. Now, Tony Pollard has been terrible recently, right? 3 straight games outside the top 32, but against the Commanders with the AFC East, the NFC East title on their mind. The AFC East title game's next. This isn't a title game, but you get what I mean. I expect them to play hard in the motherfucking paint. Flocka, the Commanders' defense is so bad that even Pollard should be a top 20 guy here. I will make it very, 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 very clear. I'm not fully confident in him, but I'm still probably going to play him. For Deuce Vaughn, if Rico Dowdle misses, then Deuce Vaughn will be the running back 2 again, but there's no need to start the running back 2 on the Cowboys. The Commanders' offense is essentially flopping like a fish out of water right now, and even with the woes of the Cowboys, I just wouldn't start Brian Robinson. For Gibson, he's been kind of underwhelming this season. Nothing really wrong with his play, but he just isn't really getting the touches. He's a guy that needs needs to bust off a huge catch for a touchdown or maybe one of his few carries for a touchdown to be fine for fantasy. And I'm just not willing to trust that against the Cowboys, so he's a sit as well. Final game here, the AFC East title game. As a Dolphins fan, it makes me fucking sick to my stomach that this is for the AFC East title. We should have just beaten the Titans. But no, we have to choke that game away, and then we have to lose to the Ravens, and now we have to play the Bills in a game that I don't think that they're going to win. Now, realistically, the Bills, they've been winning these games. They look bad. But being a Dolphins fan, it's tough because my whole life we've never won a playoff game. And always at the end of the season, there's always this collapse. Like, no matter how good things could go, November, October, September, everything goes fine. And then in December, magically the wheels start to fall off the bus. And it feels like our bus has no wheels right now. Bradley Chubb out for the season. And my hopes will never die. Right, I'm still going to be riding with this team until I die, you know? But I don't know. I'm not really... I think the Dolphins should win because the Bills suck, but like their offenses suck. But Josh Allen just turns into a different animal against the Dolphins. He really does. Fucking turns into fucking symbiote, fucking Spider-Man with Venom. So I'm scared, man. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm scared. Now, if the Dolphins lose this, we still make the playoffs, but we're not gonna win a playoff game if that's the case. So got to take out the trash here and beat the Bills. James Cook has been the driver of the struggle bus over the last 2 weeks, mustering just 5 points in back-to-back weeks after ripping the league a new asshole from weeks 11 through 15 as a top 12 back in every single game. This week, he faced the Dolphins defense that is injured to shit and already sucks cock against the run, so I do expect James Cook to get cooking this game. Shout out to Walter White and be a top 5 back this week. Now, the Bills are a team that you could say like a bunch of different guys are the running back to, like Ty Johnson or Latavius Murray or Uncle Leonard Fournette, but in order to not waste your guys' time, I'll tell you blatantly that it would be insane in the membrane to start the running back two in Buffalo. Cook is clearly their guy. For the Dolphins, Raheem Mostert, last week in Baltimore, Raheem missed the game, which came to a shock to me as a Dolphins fan and many, because everything Coach Mike McDaniel was saying was that he would be in the starting lineup, and then he just wasn't there, right? He did not play. Weird. He's dealing with an ankle as well as a knee injury, and with the Dolphins needing to win this game, I expect him to play, but we also already clinched the playoffs, so Mostert isn't necessarily a need, like a lock to go. If he does go, he's a must-start in my opinion. He's a top 3 running back on the season. And even in bad games for the Dolphins, Raheem normally feasts, so I'm going to love him here if he plays as a top 3 back. Now, my opinion on Devin 2 Chains definitely differs here depending on if Mostert is able to go or not. If Mostert misses, then A-Chain would be a certified smash like Megan Fox in the Transformers, as A-Chain, despite the fact that the Dolphins got skull-fucked, he still had 107 rushing yards, 4 catches, and 30 yards, and to score the top 8 back. If Raheem plays, I would still be fine with A-Chain, but as a lower-end running back 2 options. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I tried to get through this video a little bit quicker than normal. Normally, later on in the season, the running back starts hit videos go for like 50-plus minutes, but it's week 18. Wanted to make it a little bit quicker because not as many people are watching, and that's just how it goes. So I love you guys all so much. I hope you guys do all end up enjoying. I hope that anyone who had if you had your week 17 championship, you're probably not watching, but I hope you won. If you have a week 18 championship, then hopefully I can get you there. So I love you guys all so much. If you're new, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, whether you are new to the channel or not. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great guys' day. And as always, good boy.